The financial house of cards collapses, and the overinflated stock market plunges into a Great Depression. A financial panic grips the world.
When a corporation was in debt, they sold stocks for their company to the public, hoping the money they gained from stockholders would pay off their debt. The stock market depended on how well the companies involved did financially. And so when stocks started dropping, people started panicking. People rushed to the New York Stock Exchange to sell the stocks for much less than they had originally purchased them for. By October 1929, the stock market had completely crashed and businesses and banks were forced to close. Herbert Hoover offered very little relief for the Great Depression. He believed that individual industries and local governments could fix the economy without the use of federal aid. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Bill was passed in 1930. It raised the tariff almost 20% on farm products and other goods that were imported. The tariff was one of the highest tariffs in history. It was meant to help the economy, but instead it worsened the worldwide depression. Other countries, in retaliation to the high tariff, created high tariffs on American goods. The tariff only succeeded in hurting the economy further because American goods were no longer as widely purchased prior to the tariff. A huge drought rocked the West in 1930, and farmers had to close their farms due to crop failures, creating the Dust Bowls. After World War I, Congress passed a bonus bill in 1925 promising that World War I veterans would be paid over the course of a 20-year period. Due to the Depression in 1931, Congress passed a bill allowing the veterans to borrow up to half of their bonuses. Hoover vetoed the bill because he believed that since many veterans had jobs, they did not need federal assistance. The veterans thought otherwise, and in 1932 marched to the Capitol demanding they get their bonuses in advance. Veterans camped out in vacant buildings, and though they posed no real threat to public safety, Hoover ordered them removed from the Capitol at once. The Army was called in, and they used machine guns, tear gas, and tanks to run the veterans out of the Capitol. When local government agencies fell to ruins, Hoover realized that the Depression could not be fixed without federal assistance. Hoover assisted in establishing the Reconstruction Finance Corporation in January 1932, during the worst year of the Depression. The corporation provided loans to the financial service industry. In other words, it provided money for other organizations to provide services to the people. Even though the corporation offered some help, it wasn't enough, and further federal involvement was needed at the time. In the same year, 1932, the Relief Construction Act passed Congress. The act gave $2 billion towards local governments and other agencies for economic relief. The only large project facilitated by Herbert Hoover that directly benefited the people was the Hoover Dam. The project required many people to build the dam, creating many jobs for the poor. Lack of people buying or consuming a product meant less production, meaning less workers. Factories were hit hard during the Depression, and so they had many layoffs. In 1932, another situation occurred outside of Ford River Ridge plant. Many unemployed former workers from the plant had gone to ask for their jobs back. Guards at the gate of the plant, unable to subdue the crowd from begging for their jobs back, decided to open fire on the crowd. 4 people were killed in the incident, and many were left wounded. By the end of Hoover's term, unemployment was at its worst. Millions of people left without jobs and families went hungry because they could not find work. People formed little towns made up of cardboard, tar paper, glass, lumber, and tin on the outskirts of major cities, unable to afford proper housing. The towns were named Hoovervilles after President Hoover. The Great Depression was not due to the failure of President Hoover, but the policies and major decisions he made during his term definitely worsened the effects. It wasn't until Franklin Roosevelt came to office and produced the New Deal that the nation recovered from the Great Depression. Hoover's beliefs that the nation could recover itself stood in the way of him offering any great plans for the nation to recover. Due to his reluctance to interfere and to help out, the country's troubles worsened, and he became one of the most unpopular presidents of America.